help him. Because before, like, he was, like, with the gang, and they protected him, make sure he was okay, and there was no real, like, violence surrounding him that could have got to him. But, like, in this moment, like, it was real. They couldn't help him. It was all, like, external forces, like, coming, the shooting, like, he could have been hurt. He could have been killed. And that's, like, to me, that's, like, really scary.
Like when you read about a drive-by shooting, it's definitely scary, but being a part of it definitely had to be like almost like just utter shock. Because I remember in the book they talked about how people were running out of the tenants to like help friends or like to help children hide, and I just think it's really sad that these people are so vulnerable, and at any moment someone could die, or at any moment like you could lose a family member or a friend, and I just think it's also very terrible for these children to be living in these communities where there's guys with guns that could possibly just kill a little child or their mom or their dad. Like it's just really sad to have to like see it. And I think Sudir definitely was like, wow, like this is real. Like I think there were many wake up calls throughout the book, but this was definitely like a big one.
And also to me, it's like weird because like gangs, people like say like a good thing about gangs sometimes is like protection, but I think with this situation we realize that like you can't always be protected by your gang or like really
Yeah.
anyone. Like, you're vulnerable, and yeah, like that's like that was weird and eye opening to me because I thought that it was almost like they were like untouchable because they're like in a gang and they have each other, but like you don't.
Um, so when the officers came into the book, like they started talking about officers more, my views of officers definitely changed. Officers partake in a lot of the drug activity, and like the although gang members are hustlers or like people who like get money for bad reasons. The police like they would bust parties and take money from the drug dealers and take their drugs, and from gang members take their weapons and stuff. So I think it's definitely disappointing to see that like police officers partook in some of these bad things, and they wouldn't like give the things that they confiscated to the department, like they would keep it for themselves. And the officer when the officers interrogated the community about, or no, interrogated Sudir about the community, I think it was definitely hard for him to be in that position because he was like, should I be loyal or should I be truthful? So I think it was definitely a hard position for Sudir.
I love how the book forces readers to just look outside the norms we face every day and the stereotypes because even like Sudhir, he acknowledged it on his own like through his experiences, but like when you read the book, it really forces to see people in a different way that you like wouldn't normally see them in society like today. Like for instance, just in general, like the black people, or just even like JT as a gang leader, we saw a good side of him. We saw him being like a loving man, a protected man. Like he protected his family, and he was a family guy. And we saw a different side of him that people like wouldn't usually think. So like we were forced to like break from that stereotype. And also with the police, I feel like we police are usually looked at as like the good guys, and they'll help you, but like there are some officers that will do bad, and it showed that part. It showed that these police officers they were involved, and this is real life. They were involved, and it's like it just forces you to like look beyond what you are usually told or like expected to feel about certain people.
And it definitely relates with today and how like police officers are not following protocol, and they're being very like harsh towards people who don't deserve to have their lives taken away or to be in jail. When I don't know, I just think it relates a lot to today, and how like a lot of talk is going on about how police officers need to be watched or have cameras on them because they're not following protocol. So I think it relates a lot.
I think that when like Sudhir was very weird about like breaking the news to JT about that this book wasn't an autobiography about his life and it was just a book in general. I thought that it would be like really weird and like not selfish, but just weird that it would be about JT. Like I thought that the book and like how he was doing his research, it was telling stories, and it shouldn't have only been about JT. It was like telling stories about these people and like their lives and like learning why people are this way and like the poverty. It was very um not just about, like, I didn't think it should have been about JT. I thought that it was good to tell stories of many people, like, in the same situation. You know what I mean?
It was definitely like heartbreaking to kind of see Sudhir like struggle with telling him because they're such good friends, and I think that as much as JT like loves his community and like does a lot for his community, I think he wanted something to just be about him. Um, it's like it definitely is selfish, but I think it was just sad to see like just to see someone like put so much like hope or like happiness into something that was like just like about them for once and then just not get it. But I mean there's this book is definitely the majority of it is about JT, so I think um I mean in my opinion it wasn't really a big deal, but I think it's really sad that Sudhir like struggled to tell him, and yeah.
Um, so I feel like in general, this book was just very. It was very eye opening. Even just the experience, like the Sudhir just took part in, just like go in this neighborhood and just like experience the lives of these people. I really respect the book because it really just like made readers just like break down the social barriers that we think, and I thought it was a really brave experience, and I learned a lot. Even though like I felt like I'm familiar to a lot of things in the book, I learned so much about gangs and like the connection between like the whole gangs and drugs and violence. I never knew that. I never like realized a connection, and it really opened my eyes about in a lot of things, and it just taught me a lot.
Um, Overall, I loved the book. Sudhir definitely like made people come out of their comfort zone just by him going out of his comfort zone. Like the reader almost was with him along in the journey. So I think it was great to like see him kind of push the barriers and kind of go out of social norms. So I think this book is a really like it's a really good book for high schoolers especially to read, or if a matter of fact any adult to read, because we still have these stereotypes and these barriers that make people believe that they're better than someone, or that they can't be friends with someone just because they partake in this or do that. So I think it's definitely an eye opener regarding like relationships, and yeah.
I loved how like he said in the beginning, he said that sociologists, they usually just try to like figure out people by doing surveys and looking at statistics, but like by him actually going out there and like getting involved and being active in this, it really did explain like the questions he like wanted to like usually people want to know, but they're scared to find out like by actually going in it. Like,
Yeah.
why can't you get a job? Why can't you do this? It's because like people are stuck in these environments and they're raised in situations like this, and you don't really get to understand their experiences and like put it together. But like he went out there, like you said, like all this happened because of one brave person. Like him being brave, he made a book about it, and it's like it can be so helpful, and it can make our society much like a lot better.
And I love how he formed emotional connections. Like it wasn't just like a study. Like he formed emotional connections, and like I think that he will like remember JT for the rest of his life, and like everything that JT like guided him through and helped him through just to figure out information. But in the long run, it was more than just finding out information. It was like finding out about like people just like you.
Right. Definitely.
Podcast, Kima Bradford, Haley Brown, Gang Leader for a Day, Chapter 1. Discuss the difficulties of being Black and poor in inner city Chicago. Mostly in the first chapter, Sudhir talked about how Blacks didn't necessarily get an education. They had to fend for themselves, were basically subjected to a lot of violence, and they had to make money. So I think it's very important that we focus on how hard it is to basically earn a living in these types of town, like these parts of town, and how hard it is to just pay for you and your family.
I like how I respect how he like not only talked about that, because a lot of people usually just say like these people are really lazy, or they don't want to work, or they don't want to do this or do that, but it's like he knows that it's hard because of like when you live somewhere, you can't really get out of that, so you have to do to survive in that neighborhood. And also I like how he acknowledged how sociologists, when they want to like learn information about these people in these like neighborhoods or like inner cities, they just do surveys or look at statistics, but instead he acknowledged that that's not an effective way to find things out. Like, you have to go in, like, learn these people and, like, just talk to them about their stories and what they've been through.
Discuss Black inner city versus suburbs as described in the book. So, in this chapter, Sudir talked about how it was very violent. Like, you would know in Chicago the difference between like the suburbs and the inner city, because people would be like, don't go on this side of the bridge, or like don't drive over here because like it's very violent. So I think it's very like interesting how people almost had like a barrier between like people who most likely were white and rich and had stable lives, and people who were trying to make it day to day.
I thought it was interesting how, like, at University of Chicago, where he went to school, they had many restrictions on where they could go or where they should go. And he did follow those restrictions initially, but then it was, to me, it was kind of a jump where he just completely ignored that, and he, like, actually, like, started hanging out with the gang members. Like,
Yeah.
he went from following his school restrictions to just going out and just doing his own thing. I thought that was really interesting, and it was very brave of him.
Discuss the restrictions placed on Sudir while being a student at the University of Chicago. So that's basically what we just said. I mean, he kind of did his own thing. People, as shown throughout the whole book, people would always say, like, you shouldn't really get too involved because some of these things are illegal and you're witnessing some things that you have to sometimes report. And I think he had a lot of restrictions with just, like, trying to maintain a good relationship with the people in these in this town, and like, but also trying to get the right information. Okay, chapter 2, the use of nigger opposed to nigga according to JT in the gang community.
Well, I thought it was interesting because I know that in the Black community, we don't like to say the N word with the ER. We usually say it with the A. So when I was reading the book and I saw that Sudir was saying that JT and the other gang members were using the ER, I was very shocked, and I almost like didn't believe it. But that could be different from now because the times were different. So I mean, I don't know. I thought that was interesting though, because I would never hear anyone say like ER now, not even a Black person, like they say with the A.
Right. I think it's funny because not like funny because I just think we all would know, especially today, that it's with the A, but like back then, people like legitimately, like if they weren't in the Black community, thought they were using it with the ER. And like I think nigga is a sign of like respect, like for people within your Black community. So it probably was like a shock to him, like, wow, they're using their word, like the word that was like derogatory towards them.
Right.
JT as a leader in the tenants versus an average leader.
I thought it was not weird, but I thought it was interesting how, like, we would look at like the gang activity and the drugs and the violence as something negative, but at the end of the day, like, JT was still a leader, and it's just interesting to like look at like how you could be a leader, but like for two separate things, like something negative, something not positive. And like the same characteristics, but it's like for two different things and different goals.
Although JT's like position as a leader was kind of like violent, and it wasn't necessarily like something to like model or look at and be like, wow, I want to be that. I think his job was definitely more complicated than it was for someone like a manager of like a law firm, because he had to manage a whole community and keep them in line and make sure like none of them were getting killed, and like kids were going to school, like trying to go to school, and like staying out of drugs. So I think it's definitely harder for JT to like maintain like a safe community with like order. Chapter 3. How did JT's violent interaction after the way Sudir felt about their friendship alter? Wait, okay, I said that wrong. How did JT's violent interaction alter the way Sudir felt about their friendship?
I feel like after the Sudir saw him like beat the guy up, he was like I feel like it became realistic, and he saw this person who he kind of became close with as like not a threat, but he was just like, this is real. Like, although he was like doing research and he was doing this for school.
Donna Bird.